Hey everyone, I am super excited to be here today with one of my new fave people. We actually just met and she lives down the street from me, which is pretty cool. And we met on Twitter out of all things. So Sahara Rose is the best-selling author of The Idiot's Guide to Ayurveda, and she's been called a leading voice for the millennial generation into the new paradigm shift by the one and only Deepak Chopra. She is a certified Ayurvedic, holistic, and sports nutritionist, wellness blogger, and host of the Highest Self podcast, listed as top 7 podcasts by Yoga Journal. Sahara's mission is to awaken people to their innate potential so they can share their gifts and fulfill their purpose on this planet. So, Sahara, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure to have you. And so glad that the gunshots at night brought us together.
Yeah, so to our listeners, we were brought together on Twitter because there were gunshots in Santa Monica, and I started tweeting about it. And I looked up the Santa Monica hashtag to see if anyone else had been tweeting about it. And lo and behold, her boyfriend popped up. And this is how we all connected on Twitter. You just never know when you're going to meet people.
You never know. It's amazing. Because it was like, I think our first night sleeping in this new apartment. And we wouldn't have, so we were sleeping in the living room, like on a mattress. So we wouldn't have even heard it. So it was like all very divinely orchestrated.
We were just meant to meet.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I'm so happy to have you on today because we're going to talk about Ayurveda and how it's actually linked to everything we do, really. And what I'm most interested in talking about is something that you mentioned, and it's Dharma, life purpose, because all of my listeners are definitely purpose fueled. So what do you have to say about that? What do you have to offer us?
Well, let me just tell everyone their life purpose right now. No.
I mean, I wish it was that easy.
Right. I mean, it's the question of humanity. It's like, why are we here? It's like, I think no one has ever not thought about that question multiple points in their life. Really, like, what am I here for? And I think especially right now, we're exposed to so many people on social media who are all out following their dreams. So if we're not, we're almost kind of like triggered because we're seeing, wow, other people are doing this. And, before, when we were even growing up, it's like you had jobs, like you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you're this, you're that. And now it's so fluid. Like you can be like a holistic fashion designer or like a entrepreneur for like dog brands, or like, you can be the most specific niche thing and change that. And it's so fluid because of the internet. So I think that is sort of like creating this like pain point that turns into the awakening of like, oh my God, why aren't I doing that? Why aren't I doing that? And then it's really like, why aren't I doing that? And I think also it's important that while we're seeing these possibilities, to really ground further into our truth, because it's really easy to see these shiny lights and wow, this person's a travel blogger, and wow, this person's on the Forbes list, and I want that all too. But really, they have different dharmas. So the word dharma in Sanskrit, it literally means your life purpose, the role that you were meant to play. So the way that it is seen in the Vedas, which are the world's oldest texts, is that each person was born with a specific purpose, and the world will come into balance when each person kind of awakens into that, what that purpose is.
Right. So it's not like, there's this idea that's going out there. It's like, well, find your purpose. Well, it's more so uncovering your purpose,
right?
Exactly. Right. Getting back in touch with it, reconnecting to it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like we were born knowing, and then we were just told so many things that we've forgotten. So really it's a remembering of who you are. So in Ayurveda, which is the sister science of yoga, it's the word Ayurveda means knowledge of life. So it's the study of knowing all areas of your life, your mind, your body, how they're interconnected. So in Ayurveda, there are 3 doshas, which are 3 energy types, and they're Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So
cool.
Vata,
And you've got a test on your website that people can take to figure out what they are, right?
Exactly. So I have a quiz, and I'll explain more. We're going to talk more about the doshas in the mind, but it's connected with the body, and that's a whole other conversation. But in the mind, so Vata is like air energy, wind energy. So people with a lot of this in their minds are like airy. So if I was like, I have a friend and she's really airy, what do you think that friend is like? How would you describe that?
Well, what's
their personality like?
they don't really follow through on shit. They don't really get shit done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Airy, one day it's like, oh my God, I want to be a hairstylist. I'm all about the hair. The next day they're like, I want to be a pilot. I've been really drawn to being a pilot. And they're kind of maybe wishy-washy. They're airy-fairy. They're airheaded. We have all flaky. Yeah. Exactly. We have all of these words. So that's kind of the shadow side, the imbalance side. But then on the good side is they're really creative. They're really imaginative. They're dreamers. They're visionaries. People are like, okay, snap back to reality. But they're like, I could be the president. I could be this. I could be that. So that's the really great side of Vata, this air-like energy. So people who are Vata, they kind of look at the world from this like kind of like bird's eye perspective, and they're seeing like the higher planes and the higher possibilities, but sometimes they can lose sight of like what's going on the ground and like the action steps. They're already at the goal and visualizing and have their vision board, but it's like, okay, how are you going to make that vision board come to life? And I think a lot of in the spiritual community, we're taught alignment from such a Vata place that we're like, yeah, just like manifest your dreams and say them out loud in the mirror. It'll happen. It's like that will create awareness. It's really important to know where you're going. That's why the vision board is important, but staring at the vision board, repeating a mantra is not what's going to make it happen.
Right. It's like taking action is exactly what people need to be doing.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like having, like a place that you're shooting your bow and arrow, but really it's like, it's the technique that's what's going to get it there, not just staring at that goal. So that's sort of the Vata, the creative ambition, not ambitious, but visionary, but they lack the grounding. Then someone who has a lot of Pitta. So Pitta is fire. If I was like, ooh, I know this friend, she has a really fiery personality. How would you describe this person?
Charismatic, ambitious, a go-getter, drive.
You have a lot of fire.
I do.
You do. You're very Pitta. So fiery people, exactly. They know what they want. They're going to go get it. What happens when they don't get what they want?
We get pissed. We get annoyed. We get frustrated.
Exactly. So that fire that's like getting everything done, that's really vivacious, can explode. And it can turn into a volcano. And that's why Pitta people are the most likely to suffer from burnout, from like adrenal fatigue. From
I can attest
anger,
to that.
From, not sleeping, not putting their self-care because they're so, a lot of the entrepreneurship talk is really coming from this Pitta perspective of like, action, get things done, move faster, go through your goals. They're so in the action that sometimes you even lose sight of why you're doing this.
Yeah, it's almost like they forget that being it plays such a big role in it. It's not always about taking action after action after action. It's like be in it too. Really feel into it.
Totally. But, sometimes it's like it's like when you're running, you're not going to stop in the middle of running because you're going to lose your momentum. So they feel like if they stop, they're going to not be able to go again. But really that's coming from their own lack and their own place of fear. So with Pitta people, they kind of need more of that Vata, that bird perspective. And they also need more of this last dosha, which is Kapha. So Kapha is earth energy. So if I was like, my friend, she is super earthy. What do you think she's like?
Grounded, centered, calm.
Maybe she talks a little bit like this.
Oh, yep.
I'm just really connecting with you right now. She hugs you for 7 minutes.
Right.
Eye contact with you. She lives in Santa Monica.
Stares at you for a little too long.
Exactly. I call it like the new age hug. They're like,
oh, yeah, the one that never ends.
Exactly. So Kapha people, I mean, they're loving, they're caring, they're so present. They are the friends that you can turn to with any problem and they'll just listen to you. Listen. They don't feel like they need to offer advice and change your life. They're just there. They're like supportive. They're like a tree. So I like to think of it as like a grandmother type energy, or even Oprah. She's very Kapha energy. It's like they'll just take it all in. But what happens is because they feel like they have to like make sure everyone else is okay, that sometimes they don't go after their dreams and what they want.
Right.
So for them, oftentimes they end up taking roles as like caretakers or mothers or, something that they feel like is needed because they oftentimes feel like if I go after what I truly want, I'm selfish. So for them, what they really need is to actually realize that like, self-care is not selfish at all. In fact, that's how
Right.
you can show up as the most loving person. And so they all have different careers that they do well in. And Kapha is this last one, this very earthy one, who they actually have the most tendency, though they are the sweetest,
Mm-hmm.
most tendency to become depressed. Because what
Mm.
happens is they're giving out so much energy and
Right.
they don't share what's going on with them. So Robin Williams is another really good example of this. Like, he was always making everyone laugh and really excited, but we
Yeah.
didn't know what was going on. So Kaphas, what they do well at is in their careers is something that they can work one-on-one with people.
Mm-hmm.
They really need to, they're good at seeing people and they want to be seen. So for them, if they're like the figurehead of this big company, it's not personal enough for them and they'll kind of just fall between the cracks. So
Right.
they would do really well like doing that like one-on-one coaching or being a teacher or being a nurse or a caretaker or like a type of entrepreneur that's still really working connecting with humans. They need
Mhm.
that because they're so earthy. Earth is human connection.
Right.
um so for them, if they come to entrepreneurship from this too like idealistic visionary perspective, they're not going to be able to grasp it. If they're
Right.
too methodical with it, they're not going to
Mm-hmm.
be able to keep up. So they really need to have that on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Pittas, do you relate to that?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you
I mean,
definitely have
I
some
think,
kapha too.
yeah, and I think that it's really interesting how people, what you're saying is like people can have a combination of each of
Exactly.
these things, right? So they're not just 100% kapha. They
For
could
sure.
be a bit of both.
We're all three doshas. There's no
Right.
one who's just one. We're all
Got it.
three, but we tend to fall into one or two categories more. But
Got it.
really, to have a thriving business as an entrepreneur, you need to have a balance in all three.
Interesting. It's
Because
kind
if
of like
you're
that balance between feminine and masculine, right? Like trying to find
exactly,
that balance. That seems
exactly.
like the hard thing though. The hard the tough part.
Well, what's hard is we all come in, with a different deck of cards and we
Mhm.
all have different strengths. Some of us are like really like finance oriented from the beginning. Some of us are more creative. Some of us are more personal.
Mhm.
But as an entrepreneur, it's like so much of it depends on you, especially in the first few years, that let's say you don't like working one-on-one with people. Well, you're going to have those conversations and go to those networking events and step into that. So maybe
Right.
that will just take you more work, or maybe you're just
Mm.
not an artistic visionary. You would rather do the job than think about the future. Maybe eventually you can hire a creative executive, but until then you need to be that person. So really
Right.
the doshas allow you to understand different parts of you and like bring into balance the parts of you that are lacking so you can show up as a full person and have a full business.
Right. It's almost like identifying the different roles that you have within you,
Right.
like you said, I think when people are brand new at this, they want to try and be the expert in everything. Well, they
Mm-hmm.
can't, maybe they don't have enough funds to hire out. So they have to put on multiple hats.
Mm-hmm.
But really understanding like what are the hats that you wear really, really well,
Mm-hmm.
and what are the ones that you have to really make a conscious effort to do. And it feels like this can really help you identify what those things are.
For sure, because stage two of being an entrepreneur is knowing you can't do it all.
Right.
And eventually, if you're creating value, you are able to hire out, even if it's like a VA for a few
Mhm.
dollars an hour. But it's just something, so that thing that's like the hole in your business. Like for me, it was like web design and like
Mhm.
figuring all that out. It was so new for me, and I was doing it. And now there's so many tools, but it's like just having someone that I can be like, okay, can you make this graphic so I don't have to do it
Right.
myself? Just that one thing can help me put my energy so much more of where it is. And mine is very, very vata, very like visual,
Mhm.
or like hiring an accountant or something like that.
Right.
But it is important as an entrepreneur to know all of these things, because sometimes like someone will make a mistake, or someone will quit, or you need to have, like, I think, a clear grasp on all areas of your business. Otherwise, if you're dependent on someone and they leave, your business will crumble.
Yeah, and that's so true. And the business is always built upon us. As an entrepreneur, the foundation of a business is you. And so having that deeper understanding of who you are and what you do best is crucial to building a business that is going to earn any type of success, whatever success means to you, because
Totally.
you're the working mechanics behind it.
Hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So So with the Dharma perspective, it's the belief that that dosha, what the thing that you were born with, is related to what it is you need to be doing. So someone who is born more kapha, more one-on-one, someone who's born more pitta, they were born to be in managerial type positions of leaderships. They enjoy structure. They like looking in their calendar and knowing what's going to happen. For them, like content planning makes them excited. Like, for other people, it's like overwhelms them, but they need that. And if they don't, they're actually going to take that fiery energy and like blow it at other people because they need to focus it somewhere. So I mean, I'm sure if you didn't have your business, you'd be like yelling at people on the street.
With my megaphone.
Yeah, you'd be like, go away. But it's like, especially, I think everyone who's an entrepreneur does have a strong sense of this pitta, because that's the only thing that can drive you. Because in entrepreneurship, you see a lot of roadblocks. And if you identify with them too much, you take them too personally, you're never going to see that, like, maybe that no is just a not now, or maybe I needed to just change that offering, change that positioning. So we all need that fire, but I think a lot of people who are drawn to entrepreneurship have overemphasized the fire, and it's become too much part of their identity that they don't know who they are without taking action.
Right. And, I can speak to this because I have a lot of fire. And it's that idea of, especially in your first couple of years of business, it's the idea of like, if I slow down, I'm going to lose all momentum, and then shit's going to hit the fan and nothing's going to get done. And then it's just that fear train like keeps going and going and going. And so you continue to keep going, battling your fears, conquering everything, pushing through, when really like the key to my business is what has made it successful to this date has been the awareness of knowing when I need to slow down and knowing when I need to bring certain things into balance, which I think is so important. But like, not enough people talk about this, right? There's so many business quote unquote programs out there and experts out there, and they teach strategies and they tell you to keep going, but no one really talks about the personal foundation, which is why I do. But you being the number one mechanic behind your business, you being the orchestrator, you being the one that's creating, painting, designing, and doing all the things. And so when you are in charge of such an immense responsibility, such as your purpose, it's really important to take care of you, yourself, your vessel, and what you need, and then understand, how can I bring things into more balance?
Totally. And I think with, tuning into your body, you're able to see it, because oftentimes we're like caught up in our heads that we don't even know that we're burnt out until it's like apparent. So I think if you have a pitta imbalance, you'll feel that you're getting hot really easily, you're sweating a lot, maybe you have acidity, heartburn, you're getting acne, you're getting rashes, you're getting rosacea, inflammation in the body, muscle stiffness in the shoulders. These are all signs that your pitta is elevated. So if you're noticing, if you're listening, you're like, oh, this is like my story of my life, then that's a sign that it's happening, because our bodies like give us cues to things far before we're ever able to mentally process it. So tune into your body and like just listen to it. And if it's showing you like, it's like when you've been driving a car for too long, you can start to feel it's like getting too hot, like you need to shut it off. And you would never drive a car your whole day. Like the day before a marathon, you would give it a rest. But for us, when it's like right before a big launch, we push ourselves even harder, when actually maybe taking that day off to like really just sit and be with ourselves is exactly what we needed to, like, when the actual program starts to be able to show up. I think it's like we focus so much on the launch that we don't even focus on like actually serving as individuals.
Yeah. And that's so important. Some people look at it as stop and go, or like, I don't really want to stop, but I've never looked at it that way. I've looked at it as like, I need to slow down in order to speed up. I need to regenerate. I need to plug in my batteries. I need to be able to get myself grounded again, because quite often when we're going, we become ungrounded and we start to feel sort of like we're just floating and with no direction whatsoever. And so for me, it's like always been the idea of like, I need to slow down in order to speed up. But that is also essentially one of the hardest things as a new entrepreneur to understand. It's understanding that balance. So what tips could you provide to our listeners and viewers on like what they can do to really start to tune in more to what they need, and then take steps to create balance.
So I think for a lot of us, we take way more breaks than we believe that we do. We think we're always working, but we're actually on social media for hours a day. There's a great free app. It's called Moment. You can track how much time you're on your phone each day. For me, it was like 7 hours a day.
Wow.
For real, 7 hours. Like, granted, I'm like I'd have a big social media following. I'm responding to people all the time. It's part of my work, but like 7 hours, like really, I don't need to be on my phone that much. A lot of it is time wasted repeatedly looking at your email 20 times in a day. Look, like, you know, we can make these things smaller, create kind of time blocks for social media or like, you know, watching Netflix or these random things, and then actually focus on the things that fill up our cup. So in a way, if you think about it, especially from a pizza mindset, like getting a massage that afterwards you feel so good, you feel fully recharged, it really plugged in that battery, that is still being productive because you are giving yourself that juice you need. Whereas going through Instagram, it's neither really relaxing or is it productive. It's this kind of just like waste of time space. And there's no point. Like, you are better off to go to the mountains for one day and don't even bring your phone and like fully be there and recharge than have this kind of like day where you're like kind of working, kind of not, you're sort of just like flipping through your phone watching TV. Like that's not really doing anything for you, neither in the rest space or productivity space.
Right. Yeah. And I love that you said time blocking too. You know, what's funny to me, I used to work in social media. My business before this was as a social media strategist, and I would be on, 5 different client social media networks every single day. I mean, I would hate to have had that app to tell me how many hours I was spending on social media, but
crazy.
I hit burnout so fast by doing that, by being like so wired to social media. And like social media is such a gift, really. We're able to connect to people in a way that we were never able to do so before. But it's also created almost this dependency and this idea of FOMO, what am I going to miss out on? But it also gives rise to comparisonitis. And I honestly believe that it kills creative juices because quite often, especially
just
for
recreating,
right, like they're just looking at other people and then you end up regurgitating what other people are doing, which, that's not good for your business. That's not a good look. And so what you mentioned about time blocking, I love that because that's something that I do. And all my clients, I enforce them to do this too. And it's like really having more structure around the social media, how much time you're spending on it. When you're going into social media, have an intention. Go in and say, I'm going to interact with, the people who engaged on this post, and that's it. And then do that and then get out. Or I'm going to go post in my Facebook group, do that and then get out. But don't just do the whole, scrolling thing where you're scrolling for hours, double tapping everything, because that's like killing your vibe.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think having that intention and then also like create as much content as you consume. I think if we all focused on that, then we would have such a different relationship with social media. If we just like went on there, wrote our post, just interacted with people who comment on our things and left,
Right.
like how much more productive could we be? Because social media as an entrepreneur is a big part of your business, like if you want to grow an online following, that needs to be something that you are able to do without being sucked up into it. So instead of just like, save other people's thing, maybe look through 3 of them, but spend just as much time on creating your own and unique content. Like, don't just repost everyone else's stuff. Come up with your own quotes, come up with your own aesthetic, bring something new to the table.
Yeah, definitely. I love that because originality is what the world needs right now. People need like everything sounds the same, everything looks the same. And I love how this conversation is going because I feel like we started off with like really getting to know who you are, but then that's also essentially what you're bringing to the table in terms of things like social media. If you're just copying what other people are doing, then you're not even standing in your own truth. You're not aware of your own foundation. So it's like really being aware of who you are, what you're here to do, what you're placed on this planet to do. And quite often when we focus too much on what other people are doing, we lose sight of our purpose, and in order to reconnect with our purpose, like you were saying, we need to be able to sift through everything that we've taken on or things that have been projected onto us, or like stuff that we've learned patterns or behaviors, to get back in touch with that purpose that we were all born with. So like, one thing I want to ask, because I know there are people listening and watching who are probably thinking this. They're like, well, what if I was born without a purpose? Because there are a lot of people who feel that way.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I would say no one is born without a purpose, because you wouldn't be born. And I mean, I can talk about this from a very spiritual point of view, which might just go way over people's heads, but like in spiritual beliefs, it's like your soul basically chose your body and chose your parents and chose this time and chose this situation, all for a specific reason. None of that is coincidental. So the reason why we are here incarnated in this time of social media, where we even have access to this thing, is not even a coincidence. Like, we are supposed to be using this stuff. We're not supposed to fight against. Like, I hate when people are like, oh, I wish I lived in the 60s. I wish I didn't have to deal with social media. It's like, on a level that you might not understand, you chose this time. So it's really seeing the gifts in it all. And if you feel like there's no purpose, it just means there's more and more stuff to excavate. You just need to dig a little bit deeper. And I like to say, go back to what you were like as a kid. What type of child were you? Were you the kind that was like always drawing and like creating and making things? Or that's more Vata? Or were you running around outside, getting dirty, playing sports, playing with the kids on the street? That's very Pitta. Were you like playing doll, like taking care of animals, like taking care of everything in the house, like a little mom, a little dad? That's very Kapha. So because when you were a kid, you were unapologetically yourself. You were just showing up as you, and there were no expectations. And then school starts and all of these things, and we want to make our parents happy. And then that turns us into, we look around, we say, who should I be? And then we've kind of just gone so deep into this road that we've just totally lost sight. So I would say, like, if money didn't exist, if it was just like, okay, like, what do you want to show up? What do you want to do on this earth? Like, think about what those things are. And a lot of people would be like, I don't know, just eat and like have sex. But it's like, okay, like those are primal things that I think we would all like to do. But what is it that you can uniquely bring to the table? And if you don't have anything yet that you feel like you can uniquely bring to the table, what do you want to learn about? Because the things that we want to learn about, the things that we're curious about, are the things that we were meant to be interested in. Right? It's like, I wouldn't have had health problems if I wasn't meant to study Ayurveda. Like no one would go into health if they didn't first have health problems. No one would go into entrepreneurship if they didn't feel trapped at one point and really valued freedom. Like, all of our messes become our messages, really. It's like everything shitty that's happened to us, if we can transmute it into art, that's really the purpose of this also. I would say, look at like that thing that you're trying to fix in yourself, fix that thing, and then teach other people how to fix it.
Yeah, I love that, because the dots always eventually connect. Always, and it's something that I always call it my saving grace. I felt like before, when I was in the thick of it, you look at it and, maybe there's some people listening who are in that space, but you're in the thick of it and you're like, oh, this doesn't make any fucking sense. Why am I going through this? But then you step out of it and you're on the other side and you're like, oh, wait, that equipped me with this tool that I didn't have before, or this enlightened me to this lesson. And then you start applying everything that you learn. And I feel like that, in connection with the excavation of like your purpose, that just brings it all together. And I always feel like it evolves as we evolve, because we're constantly uncovering new things and we're constantly learning new things. And so it's just, the mess is the message. I love what you said. It's beautiful. So honor the experiences that you're in, people, whatever it is that you're going through, whatever it is that you've been through, like, honor those things. And at the same time, really get back in touch with who you are. And I love that you said the little child, because I felt like that brought it home. Like, that's a really easy way to think about it. Like, who was I when I was a kid? Well, I was the girl that fed stray cats on my street and dug worms out of puddles to save them.
That's very Kapha. Yeah. It's literally earth, animals.
Right. Yeah.
So obviously in you have this energy where you can listen to people, you can you're an empath, you can sit and really feel them and feel what they're going through, which is probably why you're working one-on-one with people and you're able to like really understand where they're at. Whereas some other people, it's not a bad thing. They just don't have the patience for it. They're not interested in that. They'd rather be like making something or achieving something. And that's just where more their energy is. And like, thank God for that, because if we were all good at the exact same things, there would be no such thing as talent. There would be no such thing as gifts. There would be nothing cool about this podcast or that painting or that dancer, because we would all be able to do it. So thank God for talent diversity.
Yeah, thank God we're all different and we're all uniquely who we are, because we're all here, you know, with our own divine individual purposes to ignite that purpose on this planet in this lifetime and do it our way. And there's no purpose, I've always say, there's no purpose that's greater than another. Each purpose is equally relevant and equally important in this time, in this ripple of time that you've been brought into Earth.
For sure, for sure. And yeah, people need to know it's not a hierarchy at all. It's not like, you know, I think because of the corporate world, we've been brought up to think CEO is the best position, where it's not. It's just a different type of energy. And then people think, oh, if I'm like the caregiver, that's the thing on the bottom. But you know, if you really go deep into it, like the yang and the yin, when you go deep into the yang, there is yin, and you go deep into yin, there is yang. So when you go deep into the CEO, they are actually the caretaker of their business. They need to make sure everyone in the business is taken care of. In a way, they probably have the least freedom because everyone's relying on them. You know, and if they don't show up, the business is going to crash. So in a way, that person who's the freelancer or the person maybe you feel at the bottom has the most freedom. But also they're in a way their own little entrepreneurs. And you know, we all have our different triangles, I would say. So don't just look at it as like a hierarchy, because even that person on the bottom is at top of a certain hierarchy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, nothing is ever what we see firsthand right in front of us, right? There's always something more inside. And like we were talking about the different doshas, like you're always more than one. And, you know, yin has yang and yang has yin, feminine and masculine work together. It's never just something that we look at that's just strictly black or white. There's always so much more depth to something.
Totally. And I think a lot of, even with this whole like feminine masculine thing, it's like we kind of, you know, I kind of don't even like using the gender rules on it, because then we automatically think woman, man, and it's not really that way. But like a woman giving birth is like the most powerful thing that's literally creating life. And that's in the feminine. Like we look at so many archetypes of like female warriors. We look at Joan of Arc, we look at Durga, we look at these people. So it's like feminine in no way means weak. We look at some of the most like influential men, Picasso, Mozart, they were what we might say feminine, I guess. So like, I think it's like a moving past that and seeing that you are everything in one, and you can play with these different doshas, these different like higher, what would it even be called? Polarities. You can play with them all, and it's never going to be just one, because every day you're going to need to show up in different ways.
Yeah, so true. You know, there are days when you're going to have to show up with more fire, and there are days when you're going to have to show up more grounded and earthy, you know, when you're working with clients. And there are days when you're going to have to show up, you know, more airy when you're getting into the vision and drawing it out and mapping it out.
Right. And that's what makes a successful person. If you show up the same way for every person, you're like what's it called? A bull, you know, you're just like, this is me, you know. We've met those people that are like, they can't meet you where you're at. And like, there's no conversation there. Whereas like truly a successful person is able to talk to a crack addict on the street or the president of a country and still be able to show up authentically as themselves, but also engage with that person where they're at.
Definitely. Yeah. So it's really like understanding all facets of who you are.
Yes.
And that's super crucial to like entrepreneurship, to leadership, because that's what's going to make you a better entrepreneur and show up as a greater leader. Is if you understand all facets of yourself and you're able to utilize them to your advantage when needed.
Totally.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. This has been so much fun and so cool and enlightening. And I know that our listeners are probably like ready to dive in and understand like what their dosha is. So before you share that information, I would love to turn the tables on you. So there's always a love punch at the end of every episode. So Sahara, what is the love punch that you would like to share for today's episode?
A love punch I'd like to share. I think for people to take time and explore themselves. I think we're like living in this world where we're just like always creating and doing and thinking about the next thing, and just to like do an inventory of like where you're at and what you've done and where you want to go, and just like do like that routine check-in the same way if you owned a shop you would like check in with yourself, because that way when you take that next step it's coming from a full place of awareness and understanding.
Explore yourself and check in with yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, super powerful. So, Sahara, why don't you tell our listeners how they can stalk you online and tell them about your quiz?
Yeah, so I have a quiz on my website. It's I am Sahara Rose, Sahara Rose.com. And it will tell you what your dosha is, your mind body type. And unlike any other quiz, I separate the results between the mind and the body, because I feel like some people can really relate to one physically, which we didn't really talk much about, but they each have their own physical characteristics, and then others mentally. So you can take that quiz and then follow me on social media. Also, I am Sahara Rose, and I have a podcast also, which I'm definitely going to have to get you on soon.
Yes.
And that podcast is the Highest Self podcast, and it's more about discovering your Dharma and more spiritual things, but really grounding it down into reality.
Love it. I'm going to have all of those things in the show notes. So Sahara, thank you so much for joining me in this super insightful conversation. This is awesome. I feel like we could have gone on forever for like 100 different topics.
Yes.
It's so interesting. I find it so interesting when we dive deep. The deeper we dive into ourselves and the deeper we start to understand ourselves, the better we start to navigate life. Who'd have thought?
Oh my God. It's amazing. And it's truly like, it's like a wow that like once you start digging into, you're like, oh my God, I didn't even know that much was there. So I think for a lot of people, they're like, oh, I know myself. I've taken the personality quiz.
Right.
It's like, there is a lot more to you than you could ever expect. And it never ends. And that's the fun part about it. It's like you're a never ending source of information.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. So to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of Love Punch, where I'm challenging leaders, influencers, and entrepreneurs like you to make a lasting impact. If you love this episode, please hit share and share it with a friend. And don't forget to rate and review. If you have any questions or just want to say hi, look me up on social media at I am Ruby. Sahara, thank you so much. It was wonderful. And I will see everyone next week for a brand new episode of Love Punch.